Hello and welcome to the Lindsay Kitchen. Today we're going to be making the pan-seared chicken with zucchini noodles, a creamy lemon and dill, and spinach. So let me get these guys out of the way and let's go through the ingredients list. First up, we have chicken, bone broth, butter, lemon, zucchini, heavy whipping cream, dill, spinach, garlic. Oh God, garlic. It's garlic. Let's go. Start by preheating your oven to 400 degrees. Now let's cut the zucchini. Personally, I cut both ends off prior to starting. The recipe calls for cutting them this way with this tool. I forget what it's called, spirulina or something. But I use a spiralizer, so it's pretty simple. The only problem is that you're left off with a very small bit at the end, but I think it's still worth it. So I just kind of put it to the side. The spiralizer does make the noodles really long though, and I just prefer having shorter noodles, so I will cut the whole thing in half, just like this. Once it's done, now it's very simple, bite size for the meal. Makes it just way better, in my personal opinion. But do it however you want. Then add it to the pan like this, and once it's all on and cut, add butter. I believe the recipe calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons. I'll be honest, this was not the best way to do it. It did not, as you can see, it didn't work super good. I think if you maybe melted the butter, it'd be a little simpler, but that's just how I did it. So I also use this salt. I like flake salt the best because it's a little bit bigger and thicker chunks and it just tastes so good. So sprinkle your salt on, and now it's ready for the oven. It should be in the oven at 400 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. While that's cooking, grab your lemon. We're going to do a little bit of prep for your sauce. So cut your lemon right in half, and then we're going to grab your garlic and prep that as well. Let me just preface this by saying I am not a professional chef. This is how me, as a stay-at-home mom, cuts garlic and minces it. So I take it out of the shell as much as you can. And I actually cut off the tips because I don't know. I just feel like they shouldn't be there. So I cut them off. And then the best way that I have found to take off the skin of the garlic is actually to rip it off if it's simple. So if you pop the core pieces off on the bottom, normally the skin comes off very easily. Um, as you can see, this one has a little bit of a bad spot, so I just cut it off. And this other one, it looks like it has a little bit of growth. There might be something in here that I really shouldn't eat, but I just cut it in half and take it out. So then I just start cutting it, and I always put my hand on top of the knife so that I can go a little bit faster, and then I will not be cutting my fingers. So that's just how I was taught, and I find it the simplest, and I like it, so it works for me. As you can see, I move my knife from side to side to put it all into a big pile again, and then I use my finger to take off the extra garlic that's on the knife so I can continue to cut it as fine as I want. And then once you get it to a fineness that you like, then you stop and now you can add it to your sauce. At this step in the game, it's time for the chicken. So I buy my chicken from Trader Joe's, but the chicken breasts are pretty thick. So I like to slice them in half prior to cooking them. So I'm just opening the package here and then I'll slice them in half. The other thing that I do with the chicken to prepare it prior to cooking is actually rinsing it in the sink. I forgot to actually video this step, but don't forget to wash your chicken. Before you finish cutting all of your chicken, do make sure you preheat your pan. I personally love my cast iron skillet, and I know that it takes a little bit longer to heat up than a normal skillet. Although, if you are using a regular skillet, you don't have to have the fire on as long as I did on my cast iron, just because you're trying to heat the pan at different, the pans are different. So, it doesn't need that much time. As you can see with the fire underneath my skillet, it's actually somewhere between medium and high heat. Now that you're done cutting your chicken and your pan is preheat, go ahead and add about 2 tablespoons of butter and go wash up while the butter is getting heated and melting to perfection. Once your butter is all melted, I coat the entire bottom just to make sure that everything is covered in butter. And now, time to add that chicken in. My cast iron only fit about 3 pieces of chicken, so I had to do them in 2 separate batches, but that's okay. I coat everything, I added a little bit extra butter, and then you want to cover the entire chicken with salt and pepper. The seasoning is honestly just to taste. I personally like salt a little bit better than pepper, and I'm pretty weak when it comes to spices. So I just did a light coating of pepper, you can see here, and then obviously salt on top as well, and just let that cook. I set a timer for 4 minutes on each side of the chicken, although depending on how thick your chicken is, you may need to cook it longer. But if you have a meat thermometer, you can always check the chicken as well. So once you're about to take it off for the final pull, just check the temperature, make sure that it is at 165 or higher, and then you know your chicken is good to go. Once your chicken has flipped, make sure that you add salt and pepper again to the other side so that your season is fully very well seasoned. While the chicken is cooking, go ahead and grab some dill. I made maybe a handful of dill. I like the fresh dill way better. It makes the dish 10 times better when you use fresh dill. But just take off the leaves and then chop it pretty finely so that it can go into the sauce once we're done cooking the chicken. You can also have that lemon on standby since you will be using that in the sauce as well. Great, now the chicken is all done. You can go ahead and remove it from the heat and set it to the side so we can cut it to add it on top of the rest of your dish. If you're using a cast iron skillet like me, use your metal spatula and scrape off any of the extra gunk from the chicken, just since it'll be crusted on there and we don't want that. Now onto the sauce. Please forgive me, I totally forgot to video the main step of the sauce, but I'll do a quick recap. Once your pan is now empty, go ahead and throw your garlic into the pan with about 4 tablespoons of butter and cook that until fragrant. I also do it until it gets a little bit golden brown, maybe a little bit darker on the edges of the actual garlic. Once that's done, go ahead and add your bone broth and cream and start heating it up. The slower that you cook this, or the longer that you cook this rather, the thicker the sauce will actually get. Now, one thing that I did was I actually put the chicken back into the sauce. However, next time I make this recipe, I won't be adding the chicken back into the sauce. I will cook the sauce separate. What happened for me when I put the chicken back into the sauce, the chicken became a little bit overdone and the sauce didn't thicken up as well as I would have liked it. So I think best way would be to just have it separate entirely. So at this point, you should be making your sauce ideally without the chicken breasts. So once the sauce is all thickened up, go ahead and add the spinach in. You're going to do them in handfuls just so that it gets really soft. Make sure that it gets fully submerged in the liquid. The amount of spinach, if you haven't cooked with it before, you put a whole bag in and it seems like a lot, but in reality, as it withers and gets hot, it will get very, very small. So I think I only used about half a bag for this, but honestly, it was just because of how big my pan was. If I didn't add the chicken in, I would have been able to easily add the whole bag in though. So just based off of whatever pan size you have, go based off of that. Then you can add the rest of the lemon juice that you saved on the side. You also want to add in the dill for that extra flavor once the sauce is thick. You can keep thickening it up as we keep going, but you'll want to keep it on a low simmer and just slowly stir to thicken that sauce up. At this point, you just want to taste your sauce and make sure it tastes good. If not, you can add more salt, more pepper, maybe a little bit more garlic powder, whatever works for you. And sadly, I did not record the finale of what this looked like, but if you imagine this poured on top of zucchini noodles, it was quite fantastic. Yeah, I would strongly recommend making it. Sorry, I don't have the aftermath to show you. We ate it too fast. That's all.